think about the most impactful leader you ever met, what made them unforgettable? Was it their title? Was it their power? Or was it how they made you feel? Today's guest, David Neylan, is the president and COO of Guild Mortgage. And when you ask about him, people don't talk about his title. They talk about his humanity. They talk about the way he listens, the way he connects, the way he sees people. But where does that come from? Today, we dive deep into his childhood, being raised by a single mother, into fatherhood and what he's learned from that, into the moment where he's ran out of wiggle room and how he's navigated that. I'm excited to have him here. I'm honored to have him here. I can't believe he's here. Welcome to the Wiggle Room. David, people describe you as one of the most connected and approachable leaders out there. If I were to ask your closest friends, family members, or colleagues to tell me a story that truly captures who you are at your core, what would that story be?
I think if you ask my closest friends, they would tell you it'd be the story of where I came from, where I am today, and the fact that I'm the same person and that I haven't changed. And I have so many good, close friends that have been friends since we were in elementary school together that are my closest friends today. And I think that every single one of them would tell you that I have never changed in my approach about what's important. And to me, the things about caring for people, giving them the shirt off your back if that's something they need more than you do, extending an arm to help somebody when they're in need, and really just making sure that you're there as a friend. Because there's a lot of people that are acquaintances. There's very few that are close, tight friends. And in that situation, for me, I would tell you, the friends that have known me from where I was and who I am today hasn't changed. And I think it's a reflection of those friends, to be honest. You need good friends to keep you grounded, and, you need good role models, and you need good people in your life to help you with that. And, I thank my friends for what they bring into my life every day. And, we have a ton of fun. But for me, I would say that if you asked every single one of them, it's that I'm the same guy I was 35 years ago to the same guy I am today.
I love that story because I think so many of us, as we grow older, we do go through huge friend changes. It's almost like phases, right? You have friends, people that you were close with in elementary school and people that you were close with in middle school and high school and college. And as you progress, like I said, we go through different phases, but you've kept your group intact, which is very special and unique.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you guys kind of carry the same values since your childhood. And that speaks a lot about who you are and kind of why people talk about the way that they do. Do you have, what are some values I think that speak to who David Neylan is? I heard you mention kindness, like, right, giving your shirt off of your back. What are some other values?
Yeah. Listen, to me, it's always about being truthful. Telling the truth is not always easy. And, your closest friends, they got to be people that can tell you the truth, that you can listen to and you can understand what they have to say. To me, honor, integrity, all these things are critically important. I grew up taking martial arts. I train a lot of jiu-jitsu today. I really, really believe in what it means to be somebody with integrity, somebody that carries values, somebody that thinks about other people first before they think about themselves. And that's the way I think about my friends. That's the way I think about my family. That's the way I think about everybody I get to work with in this amazing company at Guild Mortgage that I'm at. I truly feel, how can I help everybody? What's my role? My role is to make sure that I give my best each and every day to the 5,400 people that work here, and to let them know that I care about them in every way, in every decision that we make. Every night I go to bed and I think about all the families that are relying on us to make good decisions. And I take a lot of weight in that. And I did the same thing when I was growing up, and the friends that I had and the family that I have now, and that I'm blessed with a wonderful wife and 3 amazing daughters. And for me, it's really about putting others first. It's about having those core values that are, again, truth, integrity, honesty, a lot of discipline. I do think you have to have discipline in your life. If you don't have discipline, you're not going to get to where you want to go. And it's easy to lose sight of those things. And I also think that really just being compassionate and having empathy for people and realizing that everybody's got a story, everybody's got a situation. You don't always know what's going on behind the scenes. You got to take the time to understand and learn people and learn what makes them tick and spend time to get to know them a lot better. And that's for me where I feel like I'm able to connect with people and really try to spend time to understand what motivates them, what scares them, and how can I help these people be the best versions of themselves. And I think that's why, you started with maybe people connecting with me. It's because I feel that human connection. It's just something that I love. I love people. I love connecting with people. I love traveling. That's something that's in my DNA. I've had an opportunity to travel quite a bit with my wife and, our daughters, and just seeing people and meeting people across the world and throughout life and the roles and responsibilities from a work standpoint. You learn so much, and I always say, hey, don't ever lose the white belt mentality. It's the saying that we have in martial arts. Like, you always, every day, need to be learning, and you have to have an open mind. So for me, listening, being compassionate, having honesty, having integrity, being truthful, those are all key things that are really important to me.
A lot of great values for a great leader. That's what I hear, right? The things that you read, all the things that you read in the book, right, is kind of what I hear when you speak. And I hear you, the thing I heard the most that you mentioned is consideration. Depending on who you speak with, they say that's the highest form of love is consideration. And I think that's a phenomenal thing to have as a leader, which I want to transition into the next part so people can know more about who you are. You were raised by a single mother. That is not something, especially for a man, not many men were raised by a single mother. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are on that, but I want you to share a little bit about that and talk about some things that maybe you learned from her that you didn't realize in the moment, but now you realize now, like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I don't think this time together is long enough for all the things that I've learned from my mom. She's a complete badass. And I love my mom. Her name's Angela. And this topic is one that we kind of talked a little bit for the show. Is sometimes hard for me to talk about. I think being here at Guild Mortgage for 20 years, there are a lot of people that know my story, my background, but I've always been one to think that, hey, my story is mine, that helped shape me. And so many people have their own individual stories that make them unique and great. And no one story is better than anybody else's. It just shapes who we are and where we come from. And for me, my mom is and has shaped who I am today without question. She is my rock and has just been somebody in my life that has never given up on me, fought for me, and shaped me into who I am today. Now, I'm blessed to have an amazing wife who has made me grow even more into the person I am today, and having kids makes you grow even further. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But, with my mom, she was really young. She got pregnant with me, and she was 16 when she had me. My dad was 15 years old. My mom and my grandparents didn't see eye to eye, obviously, about the situation. My grandparents felt my mom was obviously very too young, and they really wanted her to ultimately put me up for adoption. Religious, did not want to have an abortion, but did not feel that she was old enough to take care of me. And my mom disagreed, and my mom really fought back, and it caused such an issue between her and my grandparents that my grandparents ended up kicking her out of the house. And she ended up needing to go to an all-girls pregnant school. And this was in San Diego. And at the time, they had a school that you can go to while you're pregnant. You can stay there while you're pregnant, but once you have the baby, you can't stay there. And the idea is for somebody in and around that age, 16, high school kind of age, the school helps the moms, the soon to be moms, go through their GED from a high school perspective. So my mom was able to go to school, live there until she had me. Once she had me, she needed to move out. Now my dad was 15 years old, And my dad tried to really make it work for the first couple of years. And he ended up, when I was about 2, came home one day and told my mom that, it was just too much, and he couldn't really handle it. And, my mom to this day has never said one bad thing about my dad, and has never let me say one bad thing about my dad.
Wow.
My dad left. He never was a part of our lives after that, never wrote for birthdays, Christmases, never sent money to help my mom. It was my mom on her own. And I give my mom a lot of credit for the strength it took to never, ever speak poorly about my dad. If you were to ask my mom today about my mom would tell you that my dad was a good guy, tried really hard. He was just young. And even to the point where, fast forward, I'm 11 or 12 years old. All my buddies growing up, in San Diego, they're going with their dads to go on a surf trip. And I had great friends, and their dads were great and always invited me and included me. But I was really upset that my dad wasn't around. And I remember with my mom speaking about it and talking about it. And we were at the dinner table, and my mom always made sure that we ate dinner together. And, I kind of badmouthed my dad, and my mom reached over and smacked me and said, "Hey, you will not disrespect your father in this house." And I'll never forget asking her, "Why are you defending him? Like, he left you just like he left me. This sucks. Why are you defending him?" And she said, "Listen, I'm only going to tell you this once. You've got one choice to make right now. You can choose to define this for the rest of your life in a way where you can go down a path and use this as an excuse, or you can use this as motivation and realize that it doesn't matter if your dad's involved, not involved. You're here, I'm here, and let's work towards something, and let's really get after it." And so my mom really kind of made that impression on me to say, look, yeah, I can maybe go down and use this as a crutch and think to myself, hey, my dad's not here, and all these things that I'm upset about for him not being around, and dwell on them, or I can use them as motivation. And for me today, it's the greatest motivation I have for being a dad, to be honest with you. I actually tell people the greatest gift my dad gave me, that my dad ever gave me, was to not be in my life. And I know that sounds a little weird, but the reality is I know what it meant growing up without a dad. And so I am super present with all 3 of my daughters. I am there for them. I try to be in their lives. We go to a lot of concerts together. We do a lot of sports events together. It may not always be my thing, the type of music we go and listen to, but it's their thing. And if it's their thing, it's my thing. And so for me, learning and knowing what it meant to not have my dad around made me that much more motivated to be there for my kids. But, back to my mom, when my mom ended up getting a beautician's license, and she became a manicurist. And so she did ladies' nails, and she was the hardest worker that I have ever met. Just an unbelievable lady, and just absolutely grinded during all those early years after my dad left to try and get us on, solid footing.
Wow. Wow. I love your mom.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like a phenomenal woman. That's really powerful from her standpoint. So many people live with resentment and bitterness and anger, and it comes out in different forms through bad mouthing people. But the fact that she never once did that, and she never allowed you to do it,
Yeah.
speaks to the type of human that she is, which obviously pours into you. That's phenomenal. You don't hear that. So her heart is probably bigger than,
Yeah.
I don't know what,
Get me emotional talking about my mom, but yeah, she's an amazing lady.
Yeah.
And everything she did for me. I mean, she worked so hard and busted her ass so much. She would come home from doing ladies' nails, and her hands would be so sore that she would have to put them in bowls of ice because her hands hurt from doing manicures and doing nails all day. And, it wasn't easy. Being a beautician it's a very high cash flow business.
Right.
And so when it's good, and the economy's good. When it's bad, it's one of the first things that people pull back on, right? Getting their hair cut, getting their nails done, doing all these things. And, we bounced around a lot in our housing. And, would come home at times to having eviction notices, things on the door, and having to go stay with my mom's friends, and but she never gave up, and she just worked so hard. Like, I think that's the one thing that I would always look back on in the early years is my mom's just grit, just pure grit, like not taking no, like not giving up, like not saying no, to putting us in a better place, right? I mean, it started with her telling my grandparents that she wasn't going to have an abortion, first of all, and really having me put up for adoption or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is where my grandparents wanted her to go. And then secondly, it was just, hey, that she was going to make it work and that she didn't need anybody's help, including my dad's. And then we were going to figure out a way. And she just grinded every day, and coming home and seeing, the toll that it took on her and the hard work. And, and like I said earlier, that one of the things for her is she always wanted us to eat dinner together. And so I'd be waiting till like 8:30, 9 o'clock for her to come home, because a lot of ladies wouldn't get their nails done until after work. And so she would work till 8, 9 o'clock, but always sat together. She always asked me about school, and, always was interested in what was going on in my day. And I didn't realize it until I'm older about how much energy and strength that took. Like, my mom sent me to school and worked all day, all evening, came home, ate together, and focused in on me and making sure that, I was behaving and not going on in a bad direction, and then B, making sure that I was not just doing the right things, but I was trying to excel at them through school and other things.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing your story. That's not an easy story to share.
Yeah.
So you touched on this a little bit earlier, but you said I grew up without my dad, and my friends' dads would invite me along, sometimes. What was that like? Was it hard being a young boy and not having a father figure to really lean on, to look up to learn certain things from?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, it was tough. Especially when I was young. When I was about 6, 7 years old, my mom put me in a martial arts school. And this was before jiu-jitsu. A lot of people know I train jiu-jitsu now, but jiu-jitsu wasn't really popular in the United States before 1993, right? The first UFC, Royce Gracie came in, beat everybody, UFC got popular, jiu-jitsu got popular. Prior to that, when I was much younger, I was put into a really traditional Japanese karate school. And for me, I met a great lifelong mentor. And it's kind of funny now, it's literally lived the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi, Daniel LaRusso story, like single mom, working a ton. And I would go to school, and then my mom would take me over to the karate dojo, and I would spend hours there until my mom was ready to pick me up and take me home. But in that school, I had a sensei who was Japanese, super tough. His name was Tokiyashi Takahashi, and he was in my life until the day he passed in 2016. And he was somebody who, honestly, unfortunately, probably couldn't teach martial arts today. The way that he taught it back then, it was super tough. It was, borderline a little brutal in some ways. But, he was a guy that was a great father figure for me. And, even to the point of my mom not being able to pay for classes, and I would go early and clean the bathrooms. And by the time I was 10, 11, 12, I'd start helping him with the bookkeeping for the school. But a lot of my friends were other guys, other boys and girls in that karate school that I trained at. And so some of the dads, along with my sensei, really formed mentors in my life at a time that I needed it. And, my sensei was great at, helping a lot of kids that needed it. And with a single parent who's working all the time, there's a lot of opportunity to get into some, bad things. And, the supervision's not always there. And, like my mom says, hey, keep kids busy. Otherwise they'll find maybe some things to do that aren't always the best things. Right. And so for me, being in this karate school, it opened my eyes really to honor, to integrity, to discipline. It was my first real introduction with that, coming into the school, needing to bow, needing to show respect, and working hard. And then having him as a mentor along with these other, friends, dads, it was great, right? Like it was phenomenal. I don't think it ever takes the place of somebody's own parent or father, potentially. But I can tell you I had a lot of love and I had a lot of great mentors. I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am today without their guidance. And that, like I said, it wasn't always easy. When I was 17, I was pretty cocky. I went to the Junior Olympics in karate. I won a gold medal. I trained a lot. And I thought I was, pretty good. And I needed to be reminded of what it meant to be a true martial artist and to be respectful and to be humble, and to have confidence and not have to be, cocky. There's a difference between being confident and cocky. And at 17, I was pretty cocky. And my sensei at one point, when I was in class, kind of being a little disrespectful to people that I was sparring with, asked everybody to sit down and, grabbed me and put me on the mat. And, for the next 20 minutes, broke a rib and broke my nose and, reminded me that it's not just how good you can fight, but really being a good martial artist is about having that respect and having that discipline and living your life in a certain way. And so, my mom had known my sensei for quite some time at that point and, had understood sort of the lesson, if you will. Like I said, I don't think in today's environment, that's something that happens as often. But I think, in jiu-jitsu that I train today, you talk about people that have wrestled or done different things. And, I think all of us, a certain generation had certain, interaction in life that wasn't always easy in different ways. And, it was a good reminder for me. But point being is, the discipline and the love and the mentorship came with, somebody putting their arm around you when you needed it and certainly kicking you in the butt when you needed that side of it too.
Yeah, I think life is funny that way. Sometimes going back to the moment you had with your sensei, where sometimes we got to take those hard lessons in order to learn. And I'm sure you learned a lot about yourself in that moment, and that it carried on with you to today, right? Oh, yeah. You gave that moment very, very clear. And it sounds like your mom knew what she was doing when she put you into karate.
Oh yeah.
I think that a lot of people who grow up in a home with a single parent sometimes feel like they have to grow up fast.
Yeah.
Or have moments of that.
Yeah.
Can you recall a moment? Was there ever a moment where like, oh, okay, I have to do something here that doesn't feel like a child should be doing this, or maybe this is something like an adult should be doing?
Yeah, it was just the realization that I needed to help my mom at a pretty young age. It was helping around the house. It was helping, like I said earlier, when we would have dinner together. When I was young, she would come home, she would cook. I started to realize, what, my mom's out there busting her butt and working hard. I'll try and make some dinner. I'll try and get some food so that when she walks in the door, that's not one more thing that she has to do that I can maybe help out with, right? And I think, there's decisions that you have to make when you start to become a teenager and a young man, like, hey, am I going to be respectful to my mom's rules, my parents' rules, right? And for me, there were certain things that were non-negotiables with my mom that, helping around the house, being respectful and, being truthful and honest with her about, different things that were going on, that any kid goes through as they're trying to grow up, in life, and so for me, I'm in situations where I found that, I needed to help and I needed to work. I mentioned helping out at the karate dojo. I loved it. And, my mom couldn't afford it certain months and certain years, that we were there. And so, yeah, I went an hour before class and I cleaned all the bathrooms and I cleaned all the mirrors, and I cleaned all the hardwood floors that we trained on. And then when I was 12, 13, and, I was pretty good at math and really good at numbers, and started helping with bookkeeping and starting to do some things for my sensei with, asking and talking to the parents for their dues. And by the time I was 14, 15, I was teaching some of the little kids classes, to help out and get a little bit of money and, help with my mom and help with the groceries and everything else. So, yeah, I think, anybody in that kind of environment. And again, so many of us all have our unique stories, but I think for me, it was recognizing that my mom was doing everything that she could for us, and that I needed to, at a pretty young age, get it together and help her and help the situation. And I found myself, where maybe some of my friends with their moms and their dads, in more of a traditional family unit, where maybe my friends, didn't have to work like I did at the karate dojo or school, and, maybe didn't spend the hours that I spent doing that, or, maybe didn't, pick up around the house as much or cook the food or, try and do the things. And yeah, sometimes when your mom is working, and if I'm not training it in karate and I'm at home, it's, what can you do around the house to make things, good? And sometimes just even, you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you're figuring out how to make food for yourself and stuff, and I think there's a little bit in that generation, quite honestly,
Right.
sort of Gen X is, I'm a Gen X, and it's, there's the whole joke about like, hey, we were 30-year-olds by the time we were like 8, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of truth to that, you know what I mean? And trying to, navigate life and, all the things we had to do. I think it was just magnified with my mom being young and my dad not being around.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of those hard moments, or kind of how those molded you, because you'll hear that the best leaders are the ones that have struggled, or the ones that have to fight, through things. You obviously are, as we've talked about, a deeply human leader. Do you think that one of the reasons you're so good at that is because you have had to fight through things, and that's why you're able to resonate with people who aren't in the same position as you are?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't think there's any question. And I think it kind of goes back to, one of your first questions about my friends and, what they'd say about me when being the same person I am today that I was then. Listen, I pinch myself that I'm in the role that I'm in today.
Mm-hmm.
I get to surround myself with the greatest people, the most creative people throughout this entire company and this entire organization. It's amazing. And the people I meet and the stories that I get to hear and the personalities that, I get to learn more about and understand. And it's everywhere. It's in the field, from sales and operations. It's in our servicing area. It's in our corporate departments. I love spending time with people and just understanding what makes people tick and learning more about them. And for me, that's the greatest part of the job. Our greatest asset to this company is our people, bar none. And it's my job, and it's our job as leaders to make sure that we continue to deliver for all the people in this organization, and that we provide an opportunity for all the 5,400 people that are here in this company to have faith and confidence in how we're leading them and what we're doing, and to have excitement around their leaders in terms of who we are from character, value, and from what makes us tick ourselves. So for me, I pinch myself and I think, wow, I'm born to a 16-year-old mom. We didn't have a whole lot growing up. I saw my mom just busting her butt every day, ice in her hands, from doing ladies' nails, moving around because we couldn't make rent, and heavy cash flow job, as I mentioned, and bouncing around and not having stable housing, to where I am today. And I think, none of that would have been possible without seeing my mom and that grit and that perseverance and everything that she did for me, and just truly being that rock of never giving up. And then having some good mentors that come in along the road with my sensei, with my friends' parents, who, again, gave me a lot of love and gave me a lot of tough love. And all of those things, I think, really, sort of shaped who I am today. And I think really, guide me in how I am at work and in life. And I think that's a thing that I think is really important too. What you see is what you get. There's not a difference at work than there is with my friends, and with my family. Like, I am the same person, because I think that authenticity, I think, being who you are, being genuine. I have a lot of flaws. I have a lot of faults. All of us do, right? That's okay. That's what makes us special. And that's what makes us unique. And that's what makes us different. And we need to celebrate those things, right? When we try to pretend to be perfect, when we try to pretend to be something we're not, we try to be a certain way because we've read a book and think that we should be a certain kind of leader or a certain, thought process. That's not who you are. Then that's never going to resonate with people. And that's never going to make a connection, right? I mean, people don't follow people into battle. They don't follow people into leadership because they say the exact perfect thing at the perfect time. It's because they invoke an emotion within somebody, a connection with somebody that somebody wants to follow and help and support, right? And that needs to be circular. You need to have a connection as a leader with the people that you're trying to help and guide throughout what they're trying to do. And so you need to not only make sure that the people that you're leading or that are looking for you to be responsible, you need to make sure that that connection goes both ways, and that you are really set on understanding what makes, things tick for that person. Also, they need to understand who you are as a leader, and that they can count on those qualities and what's really important to them. And, sometimes it's different things for different people. And, we've had a lot of great people, this organization, that have maybe gone other places because they were seeking something else. And that's fine. And that's great. I think people that are here share a lot of commonality with trying to collaborate, trying to help, trying to connect with people. And that's something in me. That's something in Terry Schmidt, our CEO, Marianne McGarry before her, that we've all been instilled in this organization, is that collectiveness, that cohesiveness, right? Being in the trenches together when it's tough, and then also celebrating our wins together. And I think that's really, for me, again, it's, it doesn't matter to me what role I'm in. If I can help you, if I can roll up my sleeves, if I can do anything that, moves the needle for you or for anybody else in our organization, that's what I'm going to do. That's what our leaders are going to do.
Yeah, you mentioned, and it's kind of been a common theme in hearing you talk, is connection, connection, connection. I love that. I'm a huge fan of it. And I believe when you connect with people, you create more life force energy, right? And when you live that way and you stay open, you receive more. You mentioned, I pinch myself sometimes because I can't believe the position that I'm in. Now, I think also as leaders, we get posed with challenges, right?
Yeah.
So has there ever been a moment or an aha moment when you sat back and thought, hey, I'm not leading this the right way. I need to do something differently?
Yeah. I mean, that's a question I ask myself all the time, right? Am I leading the right way? I think I mentioned it earlier. Every night I go to bed and I think, are we making the right decisions? Are we really doing the right things for the organization? Are we taking enough risk? Are we taking too much risk? We've got a lot of people counting on us to do the right things. And sometimes you don't always make the right choices. But I think what I've learned over time is that they've got to come from the right place. And when you put people first and you put those that are in the organization at the forefront of all the decisions you make, not, is this economically better for the organization? Is this better for something that is going to help us at some later point. If it's good for the employees, yes, because it all has to come down to the people, because you don't have a company unless you've got people that buy into what you're trying to do. You have to have a purpose. You have to serve the greater good. You have to have a North Star that puts us all together. And what we do, we put people in homes. It's part of what I love about our industry. And for me personally, growing up and having to bounce around with housing and apartments and not having that stable home, I love putting people into homes. The job that we do is one of the greatest jobs in the world. Mm-hmm. We get to put people into somewhere that gives them shelter, that is the backdrop for all the great memories that they're going to have, and starts to create generational wealth for them. Those were things that I didn't have as a kid. I felt it firsthand having to bounce around. But once I got into some stable housing when my mom and I were a little bit older, I remember being so excited that being in that home and being able to have a place that was ours, that we could continue to call our own. And I think that is something that is unique and great within our organization and within the industry that we serve. So for me, I love that. But yes, there are times when you have to step back and think, am I making the right decisions? Are we doing the right things? Sometimes we have had to make changes with staffing levels in the organization. And that's always tough, right? And we do not take that with a grain of salt, from one person to, if they've been here a short amount of time to somebody that's maybe been here for a long period of time. And we have to ask ourselves, are we doing it with empathy? Are we doing it respectfully? And are we doing it because it's necessary for the organization and for the greater good? Sometimes we have to say no in certain situations when there's requests to do certain things, because it may be too much risk that we're taking on, even though the person asking may be disappointed that we're not going to agree to do something that they're asking for. And again, you want to serve and you are listening. And that's a huge, huge value that has been instilled from Terry Schmidt, our CEO, one of the best leaders out there in listening, and specifically in the area of listening, and has really instilled that in me over, the 20 years that I've been here at Guild. You have to be a good listener to be a good leader. And that is something that we take a lot of pride in here at Guild Mortgage. But when you listen, it doesn't always mean that it's something that we can do.
Right.
And sometimes we find that can be disappointing for people. And so it's tough in making sure that you are in the moment, that you are really making sure that the person knows they're being heard, but still having to tell them that's not something that we can do. And here's why we can't do that. And again, that goes back to looking at the overall company, looking at the overall risk and trying to decide, what are the right choices for us to make. Sometimes it's a timing situation as well that may lead us into certain decisions. So, I guess for me, it's making sure we're making the right decisions and then making sure people feel that they're being listened to.
Yeah, I heard you say something about listening, but if you can't do it, you explain the why. I think that's extremely important. It's something that I carry through with my team. It's a huge message, because if you can't do it, people definitely want to know why, and it resonates with them better once you're able to explain it.
Yeah.
Through leading, though, sometimes we do miss things, right? As a leader, has there ever been a moment where you missed on something and you thought back, wow, I wish I would have done that different? And what did that teach you?
Yeah, I would say that if I look back early on my career, I maybe made decisions too quickly. And sometimes that it doesn't always have the outcome that you're hoping for. And I've learned over time that good decisions need to be thought through. Now, don't get me wrong. There's certain times when you have to seize an opportunity. But there are other times when taking a step back, making sure you read the room, making sure you really are thinking through a situation can do you so much better in the long run than making something happen too quickly or too impulsively. And it's a balance, because you don't want to be stagnant. You don't want to be in a situation where you procrastinate or you're afraid to make a decision. You have to move quick in this industry to really, again, grab hold of certain opportunities and certain things that can be huge trajectory changes for our company. Look at all the M&A that we've done over the last several years. Great companies, great opportunities. We had to seize those opportunities. We are a better company today because of the amazing talent that we have added across the entire organization. Whether it's come through a company that's joined us, like Academy or Cherry Creek or Legacy or RMS, or if it's been through companies and other smaller groups that we've recruited from, you have to seize those opportunities. But you also have to sometimes slow down, listen, and really, really make sure that you give full attention to some of the opposing opinions and thought processes on something that you want to do. The Abraham Lincoln Team of Rivals, great book. It's in my office. He built his cabinet on a team of rivals, right? Not a bunch of people that would tell him yes. And that to me is something as a leader that's critically important. Surround yourself with people that are better than you, smarter than you, and that are going to challenge you, right? And that's a cliche, and people have heard that over and over again. But the challenge you part is different, right? You want to surround yourself with people better and smarter, stronger, faster, all those things, right? But challenging, okay? You want to put people in your circle that are going to make you think critically, that are going to challenge you in your thought process, that are going to make you pause and think, you know what? I thought this was the right path to go. This person has brought up such great points that I need to take a step back here and see whether or not this is still the direction I want to go. So again, for me, it's maybe not one specific decision over the course of my career or, time here at Guild, but it's been the maturity, it's been the evolution around slowing down sometimes, not being as impulsive, and surrounding yourself with the best people that are going to challenge you.
I've never heard that before in regards to the Abraham Lincoln thing that you mentioned. That's a gem. Surround yourself with
team of rivals,
so people who are better than you, smarter than you, stronger than you. If you do that,
yeah,
how can you lose? I wrote this question down because this one's really important to me because I struggle with this. So there's only so much energy we have in a day, in between work, family, and everything else. It can feel impossible to give enough to everything. How do you personally navigate that? And how do you decide where to put your time and energy? I'm listening loud because I struggle with this.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I struggle as well. I'm very motivated by what we're doing here at Guild. I feel a huge sense of responsibility to deliver for our people, to make sure that we're making the right choices and that we're leading well into the future. And there's a lot of weight carried with that. I would say that there is never a time that work is turned off. It is always on the mind, and, constantly thinking through, what can we be doing better? What can I personally be doing better? But I've learned to be better, I need to have balance. And I think it goes back to my martial arts and my roots there, that you can train and you can be a great fighter, but if you don't balance yourself mentally and spiritually, that you're going to be off kilter and something's going to eventually give. And so for me, I need to remind myself to take the time and take a step back to balance the things that are important to me in my life. And those are my family. I've got an amazing wife, Tammy, my 3 daughters. I've got 16-year-old, 15-year-old, 12-year-old. I am in the thick of it right now with 3, teenage daughters, close to be, my 12-year-old will be 13 here next month. But I love every second of it. And I love being a girl dad. I love, I'm sure I'd love, being a father of boys as well. But, I love my girls, and I love the time that we get to spend together. And I know that that time is finite while they're this age, and trying to instill and give to them, and in a lot of ways be the dad that my dad wasn't for not being around, is something that motivates me greatly. So I have to take a step back when it comes to work and pick the things that I know are important to my girls and to my wife, and to them, that's being present, right? We like to go on vacations and we like to travel, and that's not always it, right? Like to me, it's being on the sideline for my daughter Aubrey's lacrosse game. It's being at the jiu-jitsu tournament for my oldest daughter Ashlyn, or it's for being at the ranch with my youngest daughter Avery, and she barrel races and rides horses. And having them look over and being there means the world to me, knowing that I'm there and that they see me being there and being present with them. But it's tough. But you just have to do it. You have to carve out the time, and you have to put forth what's important to them, because what's important to them, by showing yourself there and being there, it'll really resonate with them. And then health is really important. I train jiu-jitsu now, as I mentioned. I love it. It's a camaraderie. A lot of people have different outlets. Terry's a runner. She likes to run. I know a lot of runners. For me, I don't love running as much, right? In my mind, I think about, all the things I forgot to do, and sometimes I'll stop. Oh, I got to call my wife. I forgot this at work. I forgot that at work. Jiu-jitsu for me is something about being in the moment. Training with somebody who's trying to choke you or armbar you and, rip your head off, for 6 minutes. You cannot think about anything else. You have to be in the moment, or else you could risk getting hurt. And so I kind of apply that being in the moment, being present across all of my areas in my life. And so when I'm focused on work, even though constantly on, I know that there are times where I need to knuckle down, be productive, and I need to be in the moment for being at work. And I need to put and pour 150% of myself into that. And when I'm with my daughters or with my wife, I need to be so present and so engaged in what matters to them and what's happening in their lives, so that we have that connection that we've talked quite a bit about today. And that for me is, again, be in the moment. So when I'm there with the family, be in the moment. And then when I'm at jiu-jitsu and when I'm on the mats, be in the moment, give it my all, and again, it's all of it can be tough, right? I mean, in jiu-jitsu, train almost 12 years, be close to getting my black belt here soon. And, I get my butt handed to me all the time. But it is about getting up, not getting knocked down. It's how many times you can get back up after feeling like things aren't going your way. And it's how much you can be in the moment and drag yourself there when you're tired, when you've had a long day, when you've got a lot going on. Can you still get to class? Can you be there on the mats? Can you give your all, in those moments? And so again, my family, my personal and health, and work, I try to be present, and I try to give all of myself to each of those areas when I'm, focused and in those moments.
Presence is very, very hard, especially when you're running a company and you're thinking about, hey, we may have this deal on the table, or
Yeah.
we need to fix this process. So when you're so present, sometimes you may miss out on other things. Has there ever been a time where you felt like you were falling short, like no matter what you did, it wasn't enough? And how did you make peace with that?
Yeah, I would say that an area that I feel I maybe fell down a little bit was when my kids were a little bit younger. I was working a lot. I think this is pretty common with a lot of dads, a lot of moms, you know what I mean, out there. You have to, you know what I mean? You get to a stage in your career where what you're doing for your loved ones, you're doing for your family. But it sort of contradicts, the time that you're able to spend with your family. It takes away from that. It detracts from that, because you're working and you're grinding so hard to maybe get to that next level in your career or to do something that, will help you and your family down the road, but you realize you're missing certain things. And so for me, there was a period of time where I felt when my daughters were a little bit younger that maybe I was, missing certain aspects of things that were important to them. And, I validated that by thinking, hey, I need to do this for work. I need to figure out, this problem that I'm working on, or try to solve this thing, or take this opportunity because it's going to make the company better. It's going to make us better. It's going to help, me personally down the road. And before I was in the role that I'm in today, right? Grow the career, grow the company, do the right things. And, none of it was ever motivated from sort of a self perspective, right? Like you do well by others, you put your head down and you work hard, good things happen. Always take that mentality. But when you do put your head down and you're working hard, you miss some of the things that are going on sometimes with your family. And so for me, I had to take a step back and realize, hey, you know what? I can work 24/7 and realize that I may still miss certain opportunities. I may not get the company to where I want it to be. But as long as I'm giving my all and being present in the moment of focusing in on work and treating people well and trying to work towards this organization being the best that it can be, then I know that over time that's going to be successful and that that's going to matter to the people. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the people that I work with, they want to know that I do have balance as well, because when I have the balance and I'm present with my family, it makes me better at work because I'm more motivated. I've, been re-energized, I've been filled up back with, what makes me tick, and what makes me tick is my family.
Yeah, I love what you said at the end about being present with your family makes you pour back into work. I had a mentor that told me once upon a time I was burnt out, right? I think we were all burnt out after COVID in the mortgage business. But it was recently, it was maybe over the past 12 to 24 months. I was like, man, I'm just so burnt out. He said, you know what, Matt? He said, you need to find a hobby.
Yeah.
You need to find something to do outside of work, because it's going to make you passionate about work again.
Yeah.
And, here we are today doing a podcast. This is what I'm doing that makes me passionate about and fills my cup, as you said, to pour back into, being a top producer.
Yeah. I love it.
I want to transition into dad life.
Yeah.
Because I can tell how much you love your daughters and how your face lights up when you talk about them. Your girl dad, how has that changed you?
It's made me better in every way. Being a father is the greatest gift in the world, and I love every minute of it. I love every stage that the girls have been at. There are times when my wife and I joke and wish we can go back in time for maybe just a weekend when the kids were little, and, you think about things that you would have maybe done differently, but, it makes you realize, how much you can love somebody, and how much putting love above everything else is truly the only thing that matters. And, you're going to have your ups and downs, whether it's work, you're going to have your ups and downs, in maybe health or, working out and, certain things that you're doing. But what matters most is making sure that you give that love and that you spend the time with your loved ones, because, you don't get time back. That's the only thing you don't get back. And so for me, they've taught me so much about myself, humility, that it's good to be vulnerable. It's good, to not think you know everything and to learn every day. And, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, that white belt mentality is something that stuck with me, right? I have a white belt mentality in all aspects of my life, and certainly being a dad to 3 daughters, I learn something every day. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, it's a little more stressful than others, and certain things, you sort of have to just have a smile and think that, have a little humor, and things will all work out. But, it's tough for kids today. They grow up in a time where there's a lot of spotlight on what they do and how they do it. And just trying to give a little bit to my girls, a little bit of just balance of saying, hey, I know you're in high school right now, and I know that feels like your world, but trust me, in a little bit, it's not going to be. And
Yep.
Chad Overhauser here is sales leader for us. He's got a great saying. He says, in middle school, nobody crushes middle school, right? And
Right.
that's
Right.
one thing that I tell my daughters. My youngest daughter, hey, nobody crushes middle school. Everybody's awkward. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's true, right? And so I think just giving a little bit of levity, a little bit of just vulnerability to the situation, a little bit of tender love and care, and a little bit of tough love. I'm from the school of thought that kids need that. They need discipline. They need consequence. They need respect. It's the way I grew up with my sensei and my mom, and I think those are good things. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes today we don't see that as much as it should be. Respect for people's elders, respect for authority, and it's okay to have questions and have unique thoughts and ask questions and all those things, but respecting your people around you, and people that are trying to keep you safe and help you and guide you a little bit in life is really something important that we talk about in our family.
Yeah. Vulnerability. It's something that we are not taught
No.
from a young age. A lot of us. So I think it's beautiful that you teach them that, because a lot of kids were trained, or I think most of us shut down.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know how to be vulnerable. We don't know how to talk about who we are. We don't know how to discuss people's feelings. That's one of the hardest, I think, skill sets for a lot of people to learn.
Yeah.
Is there a lesson that you learned from your mom that you hope your daughters carry with them?
Yeah. It's, I would say with my mom, for my girls, it's okay to be tough, as a girl, as a young woman, but you also need to have love. And that's the balance that my mom had. She was tough as nails, and she was a rock, and she was badass in every way. I mean, seriously, my mom, everything she did for me. And that's hard, at the age that she was at. And so with my girls, hey, it's good to be strong. It's good to have goals. It's good to be tough, and really, press forward in things that matter to you, right? I mean, life's not easy. It's not an easy world out there. You got to be strong. You got to be tough. But you can't be so tough that you're gonna break. You're gonna be brittle. You got to have love, and you've got to have friends, and you've got to have people in your life that you care for and that care for you. And so for me, it's a little bit of that balance, right? Like, be strong, and that's great, and strive to be strong and be tough and be, a person who is proud of what they're doing and has beliefs and believes in things and is passionate about things. Those are all great things, right? But do it with love, do it with kindness, do it with empathy, and you can balance the two things. And I think with kids these days, that's one thing that I think they're challenged with a little bit, right? If they're maybe viewed as not being as strong or as tough, a lot of questions about being soft and about, everything else.
Yeah.
And it's great to have a loving side. You need to have a loving side. Doesn't mean, that that's anything bad, but you can also have things that you believe in, and be strong in your convictions and have passion around things that matter to you. And I think sometimes, people think they've got to be so strong and so tough that they can't let people in, and they can't be vulnerable to learn and to really be, someone who can really have empathy and understand in certain situations. I see kids today where they're brutal to one another. Like
It's crazy.
girls, it's so tough, right? Like
Yeah.
the way girls treat each other, like even the girls that are friends, it's somebody gets called up to varsity and they played, since they were kids and they're on the JV team and somebody gets bumped up, there's a lot of people that aren't happy for them. In our house, we talk about, hey, somebody got bumped up, they earned it. The coaches saw something in them. Be happy for them. Bust your butt a little bit more if you want to get bumped up to varsity, right? So be tough and understand the message there that maybe you got to put a little more effort in, but be loving and be empathetic and be supportive of that friend who got promoted up, right? And so that's something that, happened in our household recently. And, something we're proud of because our daughter was so excited for one of her closest friends to bump up to varsity. My daughter is on JV and she's great on JV. She's a great player. This other player had a chance to get moved up, and seeing my daughter be motivated to run on the treadmill, to practice harder, to maybe, be the next one to get called up to varsity, but be supportive. We were super proud of our daughter, Aubrey, in our household. My oldest daughter, Ashlyn, in jiu-jitsu, she's 16. She competes. She grinds. She's awesome. We've been all around Japan, Brazil, Europe. She's won competitions, Pan American Games. But you know what she loves right now? She loves coaching the younger kids. And she loves coaching the kids that are 8 years old, 10 years old, that are getting serious about their competition levels. And to see her go in and pour her weekends into coaching these kids and supporting them and going to the tournaments and seeing not when the kids win, but when the kids lose, and to have her put her arm around them, not jumping on them saying, you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have got this arm bar, you should have got this choke, right? She'll talk to them and she'll review like, hey, where was the mistake and what can we do? But sometimes the kids need a little bit of an arm around them when they didn't win, and to have somebody say, hey, it's okay. It's a learning experience, right? You like we talk about it in jiu-jitsu, tap today, train tomorrow, right? Like it is, you don't lose in jiu-jitsu, right? Like you may tap, but that is a learning lesson for what you can work on. Somebody else caught you with something. Hey, how did you do that? That was awesome. Like that. Hey, how did you catch me on that? Not like throwing a fit, not having, this bad attitude that you lost. How can you get better? And you talked about, for me and kind of in my career and everything, one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu for me and my age is I get to be with some young men and women that are getting to new levels in their careers that are half my age. And it's not just the time on the mat. It's when we're in the changing room after and they're asking me a question about their job or a new job they're looking at taking, or they're just had kids and asking me the same questions you're asking me now. Hey, I'm a manager, but how do I balance? My wife's pregnant now. I'm worried about making sure I can do both, be a good dad, a good husband, and, do all the things I want to do at work. So
Thank you for sharing all of that. I'm a little jealous of those people that you're in jiu-jitsu with, getting to pick David Neylan's mind on day-to-day things. That's pretty cool. You said a couple of things in there that reminded me of your mom about, hey, just don't badmouth the other person.
Yeah.
Right? It comes back to, it's so interesting how it just comes back to the core values of what you were taught
totally
as a young human being. And I think that's really, really cool. I know we're pressed for time, so I just have a couple more questions for you. This is our signature question. We ask every guest. Our show is called The Wiggle Room. Can you share a time in your life with us where you ran out of space? You were in a space so tight you couldn't move forward. Can you share a time when you ran out of wiggle room in your life?
Yeah, I would probably go back to 2008, so 7, 8. The industry was challenged, as you know. My wife and I were both in the industry. I had worked at a company at the time who had been in business for 20 years. Got a phone call to say, we're closing our doors at 3 p.m. It was the last day, February 2007. And they said, we can't make payroll, can't pay you. And we're closing at 3:00 today and everything is done. Just walk away from everything. My wife was in the title business. She had a similar type of situation with her employer, and we were pregnant, and we had a house that we had bought that was, at the time thinking the industry was great and nothing
Okay.
was ever going to change. Looking back, probably we're a little in over our heads, which a lot of people who've been in this industry could probably, relate to.
Yep.
But I felt my back was against the wall with, the job, my wife, the house, and, as with the family on its way. And I remember, a couple of really important things for me. I prayed a lot. I seek the help of my mentors, my sensei, some of the dads from my friends that I knew had gone through a couple of tough times with businesses they'd owned, other things, and of course my mom. And in talking to my mom, and that one makes me a little emotional because it went back to, hey, we've been through far worse, made it through far tougher times, and you'll get through this, and I know you will. And that was her message to me, and I did. I felt sorry for myself for a day, and got up the next day and started grinding to figure out how we were going to get out of that situation.
What did that moment teach you about yourself?
It taught me a lot about not giving up. And that my mom had worked so hard to not give up on me that there was no way I was going to give up on her or on, everything she did to put me in the situation I was in to be, where I am today. And at that time, a good husband, a good dad, and, and in a career that I loved. Like I said, I love putting people into homes and the business and the industry that we're in. And so I just had my mom on my mind and in my ear, knowing that at 16, she didn't give up on me. She didn't put me up for adoption. I wasn't going to give up on her. So I got after it, like she did.
Man, thank you. Thanks for sharing that moment. Those tough moments aren't easy to talk about.
No.
Appreciate your vulnerability.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know your mom, but I love her.
Yeah.
I really do. She's sounds like a phenomenal woman.
Yeah.
And then the last question I always ask everyone is, if you could give one piece of wisdom to the world about your work and your life, and about who David Neylan is, what would it be?
I would say that it's somebody who cares, somebody who is compassionate, and somebody who has never forgotten what he has come from, and who has pinched himself every day to be in the situation I am, to be surrounded by the people that I get to surround myself with, and to be just so thankful for the lives that I get to touch, that I get to meet, and that we get to help along the way. And that I love what I do. I love who I do it for. I love who I do it with. And I love this life. And I think, life can be tough. And I know a lot of people maybe who are listening to this are struggling in different ways. A lot of times there's always something behind the scenes that, you don't always know about. And some of those friends that I mentioned, I had a good friend of mine that, had a really tough time during COVID that I didn't know until a little bit afterwards. And so I know a lot of people struggle out there, but, there's a lot of people that love you. There's a lot of people that I think in this organization, so compassionate and so amazing, and again, I'm just grateful to be here. And I hope people recognize and feel, that I enjoy what I'm doing, and, that I put my heart and soul into it every day.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing your story. This has been super, super cool for me as someone who does work for Guild and is under your leadership. I can say that it trickles down throughout the rest of the company. When anybody asks me what I enjoy, what is my most favorite thing about working at Guild, I say it's the people. And it does start with leadership. So thank you for being the the head of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're listening, I appreciate you. Thanks for being here. David said so many lovely things today that I align with, from love, leading with kindness, compassion, working through the tough moments, finding a path forward when you may not know what that looks like. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, or share, and we will see you soon.